My name is Tricia. I'm the newest neighbor at Neighbour Media, and today we're bringing in our community partners and our charity partners to talk about their campaigns for Christmas. So I will hand it over to you to introduce yourself and talk about the organization that you're from.
Sure. I'm Ann Watson. I'm the executive director at In From the Cold. I think this is going on my 8th year, actually. Wow. I started in November 8 years ago. And In From the Cold is an organization that provides services to people experiencing homelessness in York Region. We started off as a seasonal shelter, a real response to the lack of spaces available in some of the more established shelters that existed in York Region. And we've grown. We've been around for 20 years now. We've grown and expanded our services. We now offer shelter 24/7, 12 months of the year. We have a drop-by program for people experiencing homelessness who are not sheltered, so they're not in a shelter. So most of them would be sleeping rough or sleeping in their cars. And that program has up to 50 people a day now, and we operate that 7 days a week in a separate location from our shelter. Our shelter has 25 beds. We will be expanding to 30 beds in a couple of weeks, and then we expand further during the winter to make sure that people on those sort of cold weather alert nights have a place to come in. And it's often those who are choosing to sleep rough or in their car, but it just gets too cold, right? So we expand during those days so people have a place to come in. We also have an employment social enterprise that we operate, and that is called the In Team. And people in that program are working. It's sort of a work experience program, but they're paid while they're working. They're learning on the job. We have team leads on every job who are modeling the hard and soft skills needed to have success in the employment sphere. And that program has really, combined with the support that we offer through the shelter and the drop-by, and our housing programs and system navigation. There's so many things. I could spend this whole podcast talking about that. But that social enterprise married with our housing programs has really seen people leave the shelter, right? They get the wherewithal to do it, the desire to be housed and to have stability, but they've also got that bit of money to make it possible. So all that whole continuum of programs and services are what In From the Cold focuses on. And we're really trying to move people forward, right? We recognize living in a shelter can't be the end, right? That can't be the goal. The goal has to be to move people past that. And over the years, we've sort of looked at how do we do that? And we've tried a bunch of things, and quite a bit of it stuck. And so we're sticking with that and really trying to move people into housing.
Good. Thank you. Can you tell us about your holiday campaign and how it started?
Started way before me, way before I started at In From the Cold. And I think, most organizations know that the end of the year is when people start to think a little bit more about family, what's important to them, and they want to give back. And one thing about York Region, and maybe more specifically Newmarket and Aurora, which is really the communities that we serve, right? Like we have a number of people from Aurora and Newmarket who are in our shelters. In fact, it's the majority. They're exceedingly generous communities. I've never seen anything like it. And I've worked in Toronto, I've worked in Durham Region. I've never seen a generosity that I see that comes out of this community. And I don't know what that is. It's obviously something that's evolved here, and there's a culture here that's very supportive of people who are less fortunate. And the community that we serve, so it's primarily people experiencing chronic homelessness, they have experienced an extraordinary amount of misfortune. And I would challenge anyone to have a look at what are the precursors to homelessness, and see if they could have done anything different to avoid homelessness. Because I know certainly that I could not have. When I look at what led to people's experience of homelessness, all the trials, all the tribulations, all of the difficulties, I would not have been able to avoid homelessness. So it's not a choice. And I think this community recognizes that. And so the holiday season is a time to really harness that generosity for In From the Cold and to remind people of the importance of supporting people who are less fortunate in their community and to be a good neighbor, right? I mean, that's what it's all about. They're not people from another community or from Mars. They're our brothers, our sisters, our parents, right? People who are struggling, and they deserve that support and that hand up to leave homelessness. And that's, I think, what every community strives for, right? Is to be a good community, a good neighbor, and to see people have success. And so the monetary support is absolutely, always needed because there's always more we can do. We are taken care of by the funders in our community, the federal government, the provincial government, our regional government. But when we want to try something new, it's our individual fundraising dollars that allow us to pilot things. So In Team, for example, the social enterprise I mentioned, our housing programs, our transitional and our permanent housing programs, they were all piloted with funds that we raised through community giving. They give us that flexibility really to try something different. And once we've got some proven data behind it, that the model works, then we farm it out to different funders to see what they will, participate in making this go forward. But that community support allows us to be really creative and innovative and try different things. And so it's extremely valuable for our continuation.
Awesome. Who are the main beneficiaries, and how does this make a difference in our community?
Mm-hmm. So, the range is incredible, right? There's no stereotypical homeless person. One thing that In From the Cold has done over the last several years is really focus its service provision and programming for people experiencing chronic homelessness, which I mentioned a few minutes ago. So people experiencing chronic homelessness have been homeless for at least 6 months or several times in the last year. I would say most of our clients have experienced chronic homelessness for most of their adult lives, and many experienced it as children as well, right? Couch surfing, living with relatives, foster care, hotels, vehicles. That lifestyle is something that they know, and convincing them to try stability is a process, right? It's understanding what stability is and liking it and feeling worthy of it are the things that we kind of strive to get people towards. And you're going to have to repeat the question.
Who are the main beneficiaries?
Okay, of course. So chronically homeless people, right? Men, women, people of all gender identities, all ages. Like we have people from 17 to, I think our oldest person right now in transitional housing is 82. All racial backgrounds, religious, like it crosses every sector of our community. There's no, like I said, there's no stereotypical homeless person, but chronically homeless individuals.
And part two of that question was, how do your donations make a difference in the community that you receive?
Well, I think, as I mentioned, they do allow us to pilot new programs, right? And I think that's been something that I've been able to do it In From the Cold that I wasn't able to do at other organizations because they didn't have that base of support in the community. So that, as well as bottom line stuff, right? Food. Sheltering is an expensive business. We have a lot of costs associated with sheltering someone. It's not just a meal and a bed, right? We have to have staff. You have to have a place to offer that support. So just helping us to meet our bottom line is important. But I think the key is we really want to move people out of homelessness. And that's what this funding or donations helps us to do. And without that, I think we would be doing a lot of the same old, which is just like this merry-go-round, right? This carousel that just keeps going around and around, and people fall off, they get back on, they fall off, they get back on. We don't want to do that. That's not why we're here. We want to see people move out of homelessness. And I think having those flex funds that come through a lot of our donations enables us to do that.
Awesome. I like that because we were talking with someone else earlier today too, and we were saying like, what's the ultimate success of a campaign or something like that? And it's not that you are able to have all of these people come to the shelter. The ultimate goal is that there's nobody because you wouldn't be needed, and that they wouldn't have to be there.
Yeah. And I had hoped in my career that I would be there, and getting towards the end of my career, that's kind of it's a tension, right? Like, wait, what have I been doing all this time? But times have changed as well, right? Like we were on a really good trajectory before the pandemic. We were seeing numbers decreasing. And there'll be these blips along the way, but there's a lot of structural things we got to get under control in order to see that. So yeah, ultimately we shouldn't be ending homelessness, right? We shouldn't have an issue with homelessness in this country. Always there will be people situationally who are homeless or need assistance for a period of time. But this piece of chronic homelessness is one. It's a piece that we really need to solve.
Can you share any stories of people whose lives have been positively impacted?
Oh man, so many. There's so many success stories. And honestly, like if you'd asked me that question 6 years ago, I would immediately come into my mind would be, oh shoot, I don't have any. Because we saw that revolving door of homelessness so often, right? Now what we see is it takes a while. I'm not going to say it's like you snap your fingers and, apply A, B, and C and people are housed. That's not the way it is. We had a man who was in it, and it's funny because I still remember him because when I did my interview for In From the Cold, he was outside the window behind the people interviewing me. And through, I could see him with his cart and, maybe he was the stereotypical, homeless person with the long beard and looking kind of like gruff. And I was having trouble focusing on the questions because I could see him. And he's someone who'd been at In From the Cold probably for 10, 15 years. When we started our transitional housing program, he was one of our first clients. And we had to really think about our first clients because we thought, do we cherry pick and take people who are going to have the most success, or do we do a combination, right? And take people who might be challenging, but it might be worth trying, right? As so this person was in our transitional housing program, and he struggled. He really struggled. And eventually he got housed in a permanent housing situation, and he continues to be housed. And this is someone who lived in our seasonal shelter while we were open and lived in a bus shelter when we were closed because we used to be just open in the winter season. And he took over that bus shelter. Like nobody could use that bus shelter. No transit riders, nobody. That was his bus shelter. And he's been housed now for a good 5 years. So that's just one story, but there's so many. The impact is really remarkable.
Amazing. Why do you think it's so important for people to give back around the holidays?
I think there's something about the holiday season that reminds us of people maybe in our family who've struggled. I don't think people have to look too far outside their own personal life to know, people who have struggled with mental health or addictions. Immediate family, extended family, friends. People don't have to look very far to know that without the support of friends and family, this person might not have gotten through what they had to get through, right? And sometimes friends and family aren't enough, and more professional supports are required. In from the Cold is that family for people who don't have family and they don't have good, social supports in their life to help them through difficult situations. So I think the holidays remind people of how important it is to support people who are less fortunate. And the community is just very generous, and it's remarkable to me. Like one of the campaigns we're running right now is called Support a Night. And during the winter months, when we have to expand and our costs go up, we try to support each night that the shelter is open. And it's maybe not who we think is supporting a night, right? It's not always, people who have a lot of expendable income. Sometimes it's a family or a couple. Many people do it in honor of a family member who struggled and is no longer with us. It's just people get it at this time of year. They're reminded, right? The importance of family, the importance of being there for people. And I think in this community, they see the In From the Cold family is an extension of that. And the importance of supporting people is more than just your immediate connection, right? Mm-hmm. I will also add that we have, In From the Cold started with only volunteers, no staff. And we have tried to really maintain that connection to volunteerism. We did, have some issues, not issues, but we took a hit with that during the pandemic, right? Because it's a communal setting, right? And it was hard for a lot of volunteers to be there. And plus, there were many reasons why we couldn't have them there at certain times, right?
For sure.
But those volunteers, I think, are one of the main reasons we have such a strong connection to the community, because many of them have been there for years. They know our clients. They know that the stereotypes aren't real. And they have their networks within the community, and they share what they know with the community. And I think that also goes a long way to when people are thinking at this time of year, it's the end of the year, they're thinking about, family and people who are less fortunate than them. And they're reminded by their neighbors and friends, right, that there is, this organization that's supporting people, and your dollar does have impact. And I think when people now are giving, they're really thinking about that, right? Like if I'm going to give $50 or $100 or $1,000 or $10,000, I really want to know, what is that money going towards, right? Mm-hmm. They want to know that it's having impact. And so our volunteers, I think, are ambassadors, right? They're out there in the community. They're talking to friends. They're talking to family. They're talking to coworkers. They take that message really far and wide, and I think that's been really important to us, getting our message out.
Just quickly, off sheet, tell me a little bit about sponsoring a night and what that looks like.
Mm-hmm. So it's Support a Night. We try to support every night from November 1st to April 30th. All of April is sponsored. It's interesting.
Wow.
One church sponsored every single night in April. And we have a number of, I said sponsored, it's support. We used to call it Sponsor a Night, and
I got it in your head.
We've changed it to Support a Night, but I'm like the worst at sticking to something new. So, so we try and find a sponsor. So it's $450 to sponsor a night at the shelter, Support a Night at the shelter. And we do have a fundraiser on staff, and so she tries to connect with as many people as possible to get that program supported, and that just covers the shortfall in funding that we have for the shelter. It's a interesting program, and it seems to be a lot of people will support a night in honor of someone, a family member, or
it's a great idea,
someone they've known in the community. So we promote that on our social media, and we support it. Or we promote it within the shelter as well. And it means a lot to people who are in the shelter too, right? That's another thing. Like, and it goes with our volunteerism as well. Like, when a volunteer gets to meet someone in the shelter, a client, right? Then when they see them on the street, they stop and say, hello, how are you doing, right? I haven't seen you in a while, or, oh, I remember last week you said you were going to do this. Have you done that, or whatever, right? It's just the same, they're afforded the same belonging, I guess, that everybody else is. And it goes a long way to making our clients feel like they do belong here and that people do care. So the Support a Night does that as well.
Awesome. Besides monetary donations, how can the community get involved with In From the Cold?
So volunteerism is huge, as I said, and we are short volunteers. We had about 180 prior to the pandemic. We're down to about 100 right now. So we're slowly rebuilding that roster. So we have volunteers who come in the morning to prepare breakfast for our clients. We have volunteers who come in the evening to serve dinner, clean things up. After dinner, sit around and chat, play a game of checkers or whatever with our clients, and then they go home. We have volunteer board members, volunteers on our fundraising committee. So volunteerism is super strong. Another interesting program we have, which happens to be Friday, so today is our Friday community meal. And that meal is prepared by a different providing group every week. So it's church groups, sports associations, could be your work team could come in and prepare it. Families come in and prepare a meal. So they pay for the ingredients, they prepare the meal, and then we have a team of volunteers who packages up into takeout containers. And then the community is invited to pick up a meal. So it could be anyone in the community, and they give out between 90 and 110 meals every Friday. So it's not for our clients; it's for people experiencing food insecurity in the community. So people who are, their paycheck or their benefit doesn't stretch all the way to the end of the month, so they can come and pick up a meal at In From the Cold, and it's a homemade meal. So every Friday. Martha, who does our volunteer coordinator, has to fill every Friday with a different providing group. And usually she's working ahead, 6 months, right? Because that's how quickly they fill up. It's a really good, that being said, I know there's dates in January. So if anyone's listening, there are dates in January. But it's a really good opportunity to engage with the community or engage with the shelter and our clients and the community in a controlled and safe environment, right? So it's a really good stepping stone to doing something else in the shelter. So many of the providing groups, people from those groups have become volunteers, right? But it's a really nice thing. They get to come into the shelter, they prepare the food there. It's an inspected kitchen. Unfortunately, people can't prepare it off-site unless it's done in an inspected kitchen. And then and then they get to meet our clients as well, right? So, yeah.
Win-win.
Yeah.
That's nice. Good. Do you have a message that you'd like to share with families or individuals who might be struggling this holiday season?
Families who are struggling. I think there's a lot of support out there. There's a lot of supportive organizations. One thing that always worries me is that we only know like the tip of the iceberg, right? It's what's below, the number of families and individuals and kids who are struggling that don't ask for help. That's what worries me. I feel like there's so much that we don't see. And I think the only thing I can suggest, or the message I would give, is that there's a lot of caring organizations out there who can provide support during this time of year, and at other times of the year as well, right? Like we often, our donations dry up in the summer, right? So we often thought, can we do a Christmas in the summer? But how you kind of market that is it's like off. So we haven't figured that out yet. But it's that encouraging people just to take that step and reach out, right? It's hard. Like, I think it's hard for Canadians in particular, right? Like, we're very private and very, we internalize a lot. And to step out of your comfort zone and ask for help it's hard for a lot of people. And I do have a lot of concerns that there's a lot of people on the verge, right? On the verge of just being able to pay the bills, being able to pay the rent, being able to pay all the stuff that they need to pay for their kids. And they're just like that, that one paycheck away from homelessness. Like, it's not even that. Like, half of them barely make it to the end of the month, and they're having to borrow from friends and families. And I just worry that we're not presenting things in a way that allow people to reach out. So my message would be reach out even to, if you don't know who to reach out to anybody, right? And then, hopefully that they can connect you with the right supports.
Great message. So we've talked about supporting a night. We've talked about volunteering. We've talked about if you want to come and provide a meal. Where can people go to sign up or to get more information about all of these things?
Probably the best thing is to head to our website. So it's infromthecold.ca. And that would direct you to whoever it is that you need to speak to in order to if you want to attend a volunteer training session, or you want to become involved in the community meal, or you want to make a donation, everything is there.
Okay. Any final thoughts?
No, I don't think so.
Awesome.
I think I talked a lot.
No, that was great. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much.